Do. Thank you. You have 5 minutes to make your opening statement.
Welcome to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. Let's talk about all the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you missed in The Boys, Episode 7, The Butcher, the Baker, and the Candlestick Maker. The title is taken from an arc from the comics, but also from the famous nursery rhyme. Now, believe it or not, this rhyme actually traces its origins to the 14th century, and it originally referenced peep shows. Appropriate, since superhero porn provides the symbolic backbone of this story. So let's talk about that opening sequence. I'm going to point out all of the Easter eggs and then tell you how this opening reveals the episode's theme that the other storylines extrapolate upon. This character is played by Charlie Kuntz, but Community fans will know him as Fat Neil. Now, in this episode, he plays Tommy Peterson. He's a massive fan of soups. This is a black noir action figure, a Stormfront poster, and a Stormfront figure and bobblehead. And this is actually an enlarged black noir comic book cover that we saw back in episode 1. When he's shopping, we see A-Train cereal, a black noir shaving kit, and Starlight skincare that we first saw a couple episodes ago. Now, this poster is of Soldier Boy, the boys' version of Captain America who was referenced in episode 1.
Heroes, like Soldier Boy, killing Germans by the dozen.
We also see a statue of Soldier Boy here, which, okay. Stormfront is a suit from the 40s who has not aged, so maybe Soldier Boy is still around. Do we have any theories who he could be? Maybe Stan Edgar? Let me know your theories on who Soldier Boy could really be down in the comments. So in this sequence, we learn a few key things about Tommy. He lives with his mom. She's inattentive and apparently a drinker. And he's also shy around girls, implying that he's a lonely incel. But most importantly, he's susceptible to the type of hyper fear-mongering that Stormfront is spewing out onto VOT News. We've seen Stormfront creating memes in past episodes, but this shows us who these memes actually reach: lonely men like Tommy. Later, we even see one of these memes posted on a utility pole, a subtle way of saying that her message is being spread throughout the airwaves. She says,
"Keep America safe again."
A not very subtle reference to Trump's campaign slogan. She also employs much of the same rhetoric, like fear-mongering about illegal immigrants.
Why does it matter what some supervillain loving snowflake?
One of the memes puts targets on Congresswoman Victoria Newman. Now, this is reminiscent of the attempted assassination of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who a few weeks before was literally targeted on a Republican fundraising email. Now, I don't like to get political in these videos or talk about what I think or what you think, but with The Boys, it's kind of hard not to address the political symbolism inside the show. In this episode, particularly how susceptible young men can take propaganda way too far. Alright, so why is this whole opening here and how does it set up the rest of the episode? Tommy's story establishes the episode's themes of fatherhood and toxic masculinity. Now, there's a lot of different opinions on what toxic masculinity is. In this episode, it's referring to the idea that a man has to prove he's a man by committing violent acts. According to several characters in the show, if a man doesn't whip ass or talk about whipping ass or get some ass, then he's not really a man. I guess. This opening sequence explores the link between toxic masculinity and fandom, which, I'm here to tell you, part of my job is monitoring YouTube comments, and there are definitely insecure, toxic men inside the superhero sci-fi fantasy fanbase. But I'm not talking about you. You're great. Your opinions are well thought out, and you bring a lot to this discourse. You are very secure in your masculinity. But look at poor Tommy. He's one of the most dangerous people on Earth. A young, scared, angry man looking for direction.
I am counting on you.
But Tommy reminded me of another angry young man, Gavrilo Principe. Like Tommy, he was young, impressionable, afraid, and looking for somewhere to belong. He fell in with a terrorist organization called the Black Hand, killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and started World War I. Guys like Tommy are potentially the most dangerous people on Earth, and they power Stormfront's movement. In fact, Stormfront becomes a proxy father to Tommy, encouraging him to be a man and fight for her. So, as we go through this episode, we'll talk about how each storyline explores these themes of fatherhood and masculinity. Notice that this news ticker mentions the Congresswoman Victoria Newman dance video. Now, this is likely referencing this video of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dancing in college. Victoria says,
"Take a shot at the king. We can't fucking miss."
Now, this seems like a reference to this Omar line from The Wire.
Hey, yo, lesson here, babe. You come at the king, you best not miss.
Then we get the unlikely pairing of Lamplighter and Huey. Lamplighter wants to watch soup porn all day, and I laughed out loud that the Deep is in a kiddie pool wearing floaties. The other movies feature A-Train, Queen Maeve, Starlight, and Translucent. and later we cut to a porno featuring Jack from Jupiter, a member of the Seven from the comics. And in the comics, Jack was actually fired from the Seven after a sex scandal that looks very much like this one. Also notice that Lamplighter keeps these pornos in a gym bag branded with his own name. And Lamplighter further clarifies the episode's theme when he describes his new life role.
Now look at me. I'm like the cuck in the porn.
Okay, I hate this word because it's stupid. But for those of you who don't know, a cuck is short for a cuckold. You know, a weak man who can't whip ass. But Lamplighter also mentions his father being proud that his 4-year-old son was strong enough to burn down his house.
My dad was so proud. My son's a soup.
This idea is brought up several times in the episode. Fathers who raise their sons to be a badass instead of making sure they're kind, productive members of society. Case in point, Billy Butcher's dad. And look everyone, it's Jon Noble from Lord of the Rings and Fringe. Butcher's brother Lenny was weak, but Billy was tough. But their father's aggressive, hyper-masculine parenting led to Lenny's death and made Billy a miserable a-hole.
You beat the fucking shit out of both of us, didn't you?
In this episode, Mallory talks about the cycle of violence.
Doubt you'd be happy with that unending cycle of brutality.
And Billy's relationship with his father shows that he's lived his life within this cycle of violence and abuse. And this is repeated again when Vogelbaum describes raising Homelander.
When he was a little boy, 5 or 6, he was quite sweet. But you know, I needed him to be the strongest man in the world. So I went to work on him.
Homelander and Butcher were both raised hard, and now Homelander is making the same mistakes with little Ryan. Huey is the counterpoint to this.
I watched my dad do nothing his whole life.
Huey is looking for a hypermasculine role model, and he's found that with Butcher. But he doesn't use violence to prove his manhood, he only hurts people to save the people he loves. The reason Lamplighter uses porn to make his analogy isn't just because it's funny. It's showing that the media we consume actually aggravates this toxic behavior. In the movies, we see real men take no shit. They beat up bad guys and then they get the girl.
Whatever happened to Gary Cooper? The strong, silent type. That was an American.
The problem is when men like Tommy can't separate reality from fiction. So he begins to separate men into camps. There's winners and losers, real men and cucks. So Tommy murders someone to prove that he's not some weak little cuck. Homelander even uses his movies to teach Ryan how to be a real man.
You're in a movie?
I'm in a bunch of movies, man. Let's see, there's Homelander Origins, Homelander Rise of a Hero.
And by the way, these movies,
Homelander Darkest Day, Homelander Brightest Night,
are references to the daily oath that every Green Lantern swears to their portable chargers.
Brightest day, and blackest night. No evil shall escape my sight.
Now let's talk about Stormfront and Homelander's rally, where he drops the obligatory mass shooting reply.
Awesome press.
Now notice that their banners are designed to look like the Confederate battle flag, as foreshadowed a couple episodes ago by this art. Now this scene, staged in front of a giant American flag and set near a statue of a World War II soldier, is very similar to the opening of the movie Patton. In that scene, Patton talks about how fighting makes the man, and how you don't want to die a soy boy cuck.
All real Americans love the sting of battle.
He also says this line.
When you put your hand into a bunch of goo that a moment before was your best friend's face, you'll know what to do.
Which seems really similar to the episode's final scene. Stormfront and Homelander's storyline is about spreading their influence, first to Tommy, then to these crowds, and finally to Ryan.
Don't touch me, I hate you!
Oh, little Ryan. Making stop-motion Lego shorts reenacting Oscar bait white savior films like The Blind Side and Dances with Wolves.
Only here is your quarterback. You protect his blind side, okay?
This kid was me. And in this scene, he's building the house from Terms of Endearment, the other favorite movie of his mother's that he mentions. Stormfront mentions,
it's to Vought-land?
Yeah.
Another not-so-subtle way of connecting the Vought superhero franchise with Disney's. Abusive fathers are a recurring theme in this episode, but so are mothers. Butcher and Annie meet their mothers at the same coffee place. Donna January is a bit more like Butcher's abusive father. She pushed Annie into a career, believing that she had to grow up a certain way to be happy. 3 mothers have their children taken away from them, Becca, Donna, and Tommy's mom. And Butcher's mother ambushes him with his dad in the same way Donna accidentally ambushes Annie and Homelander ambushes Becca. The lesson here is clear. If your kid becomes directionless, like Annie, then they become susceptible to evil influences, like Black Noir. Mrs. Butcher wants Billy to see that he shouldn't end up like his father.
He wouldn't have this hold over you, and you wouldn't become like...
But in the case of he and Annie, the damage is done. They both have lost their faith in the world and their moral compasses.
I gave my whole life to nothing.
Annie's prison cell is both physical and emotional. She's lost her faith in God, her parents, the government, and now she's trapped. But by the end of the episode, she's found a new reason to go on.
Huey?
Huey is also Butcher's motivation to keep fighting, because the only reason men like him exist is to protect the little brothers of the world. Huey is his new Lenny. When Lamplighter breaks into Vought Tower, he mentions,
"Me and Mr. Marathon used to sneak college girls in this way."
Now this was the Seven's original speedster from the comics, who was name dropped last episode.
You served 4 years longer than Mr. Marathon. Now that is something, okay?
And once again, Black Noir proves why he's the best character on the show. His fatal superhero weakness is...
he has a tree nut allergy.
His eventual downfall with an Almond Joy was foreshadowed a few episodes ago.
Would you like an Almond Joy?
Now this scene where Maeve defends Annie from Noir was adapted from the comics, where Black Noir is trying to force Annie to change into a skimpy uniform in front of the entire team. Earlier, Becca is making brave Maeve vegetarian pride lasagna for Ryan, who's wearing the same colors as Homelander's costume, foreshadowing that he's going to go away with him.
All right, he needs his mother. Don't worry, he'll still have a mother.
Once again, the t-shirts are fun to spot in the show. MM is wearing a Fife Dog tee, while Huey wears Journey, and later on, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, which is an album that I have been obsessed with lately. It's not an Easter egg, but did you notice that when Butcher drives up to Vogelbaum's house, he drives straight through his yard to park in front of the house? Nice little detail. We briefly check in with A-Train in the Deep, where we learn that Eagle the Archer is out of the church. Now, this mirrors real-life celebrities who broke from Scientology and were persona non grata afterwards. Notice that after this, he's trending #1 on superporn.com. I'm still not sure how the Church of the Collective storyline is going to tie into all of this. Maybe Alistair Adana is a soup who's been exploding heads for Vought? I mean, let me know your theories down in the comments. Now let's talk about that brutal final scene. Poor Shockwave has his first and last appearance with the Seven, which could be a clue that Alistair is the one popping everybody's heads. He had to clear the speedster out to make room for A-Train's return. But the most heartbreaking death was this poor person. That's your mom. And this famous painting of George Washington with his horse Blueskin is sprayed with blood. The symbolism here being that the father of our country is standing next to a pale horse, the symbol of death, and he's being splattered with human remains. Again, this ties into the episode's theme. Washington became president because he was a tough guy who won the war. And now our national father figure is covered in blood, spurred on by our desire to see soups in an endless war on terror. It was weird that Stormfront and Homelander are standing around all casual. I mean, did they expect the attack? Just to keep up appearances, they should have been trying to save people while the cameras were still rolling. Now, the Deep seems to know something because he's worried that he's next. The final joke of the episode is this title card, bragging that C-SPAN offers an unfiltered view of government while it's filtering our view of government. And of course, the closing song is You'll Never Vanish From Our Hearts, the translucent anthem that Annie sings in episode 1. Well, that's all the Easter eggs that I noticed, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.